Practice number 4 in the books for Ohio State. Mick Walker right here. I'm Spencer Holbrook. We were just here in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, saw none of practice, but talked to Ryan Day, that's the head ball coach. We talked to Matt Patricia, that's the defensive coordinator. We talked to Brian Hartline, that's the offensive coordinator. A lot to learn here on a Monday here in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. We will be back in here on Tuesday for more. We'll be back in here on Wednesday for Pro Day, and then Thursday for practice number 6. Big week, a busy week, and the Buckeyes have a lot to get accomplished. But Mick, to story today, Ryan Day addressed the first few practices of spring ball. It seems like the Buckeyes have a lot of energy, and I think that's where we start this edition of the practice report is Ryan Day talking about the energy of this team, the identity of this team, the leadership of this team. It seems like things are moving in a pretty good direction right now to start spring practice.
Yeah, I think we saw that the first couple of times we saw practice last week. A lot of energy, a lot of positivity, a lot of movement throughout the whole practice, and I think it carried over what he said today to the media. He also has done a really good job, I think, throughout the first couple of times we've spoken to him in the spring of trying to positively distance this team from the national championship team. Like, obviously, they want to go back-to-back. They want to win another national championship, but this is not the same team, and I think he touched on that and how you build leaders from that after losing guys like Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau and Mecca Ibuka, who's down there getting ready for a pro day. So when you distance yourself from those kind of leaders, it's just you have to figure out ways to have new leaders, and I think he addressed how they're kind of going about that as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because you want to emulate what the national championship team just did. However, this is a new group of guys, and there's a leadership vacuum. There's a lot of leadership that has to be replaced on this team. There's a lot that has to get done, but it seems like things are moving in a positive direction, and I like the way that you said that, positively distance themselves. You know, this is an entirely new group of guys. There's going to be a new quarterback. There's going to be a new defense. There's a new coaching staff. But all reports right now are that things are heading in a good direction. This team was in helmets today. They'll be in full pads by the end of the week. Looking forward to hearing more about that, just because we're not really getting a lot right now. It's more of like an acclimation period. Even Brian Hartline had mentioned that. Matt Patricia talked about that a little bit. It's just getting the flow, getting things accomplished before you put pads on and actually start hearing them thud and doing some things here in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. I did like what Ryan Day said. You know, I asked him about Jeremiah Smith being an Iron Buckeye. He was asked about Austin Saraville being an Iron Buckeye. That list came out last week. There are individual guys who are already starting to stand out, but I think as a team, it's kind of a wait-and-see mode of just get through this week of practice, and then you can start drawing some conclusions on what this team's going to look like in the fall, just because, you know, spring is so young right now.
Yeah, and I think the third guy that won I know the third guy that won the Iron Buckeye was Sonny Styles as well, and I think that's I'm correct on that, correct? Right?
Yeah.
Okay, So he was the third guy that won the Iron Buckeye, and I think you've already kind of seen, we've talked about it off the record and a little bit on video. I think Sonny has really embraced the leadership role from the little we've got to talk to him, the little we've gotten to see of him, and I think that's been something that's important. As they look for more guys, I think Sonny is kind of, as much as Caleb and Jeremiah are probably the two best players on the team, it feels like Sonny going into the season might be the pulse of the team, and it'll be interesting to see how it looks this spring when they get the pads on, and he's really kind of captaining this defense.
Yeah, good word, pulse. Let's talk here. Matt Patricia talked, first question, C.J. Hicks. Like, he seems very excited to work with versatility. He was talking about nickel versus big nickel. He was talking about defensive linemen being able to do multiple things and being able to play 16 games, and him having experience with longer seasons, being from the NFL. You don't want to draw any conclusions because, you know, the rubber will meet the road at the end of August when Arch Manning and Texas come to town. But so far, it's hard not to like what you're hearing from Ryan Day, from Matt Patricia, about these individual defenders, but also about the defense and the direction of that as a whole. I really like what I'm hearing so far from not just Ryan Day about Matt Patricia, but from Matt Patricia about himself. He's reflected on his time in Detroit. He's talked about how lucky he was to work with Bill Belichick, but also he's looking forward and wondering how good this defense can be, and he's starting to install things that he needs to. Sounds like it's going to be versatile. Sounds like it's going to be good. It sounds like it's going to be a group that gets after it and confuses offenses, and that's what you want to hear right now. It's what every defensive coordinator in America is saying about their unit right now, but it's good to hear those kind of things from Matt Patricia.
Yeah, and I think you and I have talked a lot about this spring heading into it. Oh, is it going to be Jalen McClain? Is it going to be Malik Hartford? Who's going to start next to Caleb Downs at safety? I think Matt Patricia, as much as he can kind of tell us, was like, hey, like, these guys could both legitimately play. At the same time, too, because I think you mentioned the big nickel playing different guys. Like, the whole idea of whether you're only going to have 11 starters, this team could enter into a fall where you get into the more coach peak where it's like, well, we have 14 starters because you count C.J. Hicks as a guy that can rush the passer on different downs. You can add and say, hey, we have a safety. We have, when we want to go to linebacker, we put a guy like Riley Pettijohn, or we put Garrett Stover or Peyton Pierce in the middle so we have more coverage. Like, there's but listening to Matt Patricia talk, I think there's very much a goal of getting so many guys on the field, because there's different guys can obviously do different things, and I think that kind of starts with those safety spots.
Oh yeah, I mean, he started talking about big nickel versus regular nickel and different ways to confuse quarterbacks, and I was like, okay, they're going to be all right. This is much different than, you know, some of the things that we had heard from Kerry Combs, for example, when that experiment didn't work. And it sounds a little bit more like what Jim Knowles was talking about by the end of his tenure. At the beginning of his tenure was a little different, but I think by the end of it, this is kind of what you were hearing from Knowles, and you're hearing it from Patricia. You should feel confident that this defense is in good hands. What I do feel confident in is Bryden Hartline in this offense. Hart's never going to like self-reflect, but I think, you know, Berm from Dotting the I's asked him an interesting question today about, like, you know, why is he more ready for this? And if you kind of read between the lines of other answers that he gave, not only to me and learning from other offensive coaches, but from just his entire press conferences, like, he has learned so much in the 2 years since 2 springs ago when he was calling plays in the spring, and then Ryan Day took those back and called plays for the Kyle McCord-led offense. Like, he's a lot different than he used to be. And Tyler Bowen, when we talked to him 2 weeks ago out here on the practice field, used the term organized. Hart's as organized as any person Bowen said he had ever been around. I think that's a pretty good thing to be having people say about you, is how organized you are. And so I'm liking this Bryden Hartline move to offensive coordinator so far. Now, again, just like I said with Patricia, rubber meets the road at the end of August. But right now, you have to like what Hartline is saying and what you're seeing from him, what he's doing. You know, answering questions about the running backs, which was weird to hear him talk about today, to be honest. Hearing him talk about the quarterbacks and evaluation, the offensive line, and you get the sense that he is just so different than he was 2 years ago. And I think he is truly ready for what's coming at him here in the next couple months.
Yeah, I mean, we read into a little bit more of like just mannerisms and actions and what, like, how he's speaking, but just about every question he got asked today, he took at least a beat or two to think about the question, process it before he just said anything. It seemed like you said, he's organized, he's well thought out. It didn't seem like he was guessing about anything up there, whether it was a quarterback question or a running back question. He seemed he's knowledgeable because he's been in these practices, but very well thought out, knowledgeable, and like detail oriented on how you're going to get to this process when it comes to just making decisions with Carlos Loughlin about the running backs, talking to Billy Fessler and Ryan Day and the other coaches on the staff about what's going to happen at quarterback, and then even trusting Tyler Bowen and some of these guys for offensive line rotations and playing different guys, which I believe Bill Landis asked him about from Dotting the I's.
Yeah, it's just interesting. Like, I think today was more interesting than informative. Just you're getting a glimpse at what these guys' thought processes are as they go through spring practice into the second week of spring ball. It's a big week for this program, and they're going to find out a lot more about themselves in the coming days. Lettermen Row will also be finding out a lot more. This was just a very rapid practice report. That's Mick Walker on the other side of me. I'm just Spencer Holbrook. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys over at lettermenrow.com. $1 for your first week right now. That's a full week of spring practice for just $1. That's a lot of recruiting stuff as well. A ton of recruits in the building today. Mick's got you covered over there, as well as Alex Gleitman. I'll just be writing about Ryan Day, Matt Patricia, and Bryden Hartline's press conference after we talk to all 3 of them today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Hit the subscribe button below. Become a member at lettermenrow.com. Like the video, and we'll see you guys back in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center on Tuesday for another recap of Buckeyes spring practice.